He's gonna make his round.
Yeah, very much so. Alright, that's lovely. I'm worried.
stuff.
Such a warm welcome to everyone at home who's streaming in, to everyone here in our synagogue sanctuary. Some of you here just for a general Shabbat morning, or as Emma says, I'm not missing the Daughters of Zolafachad for anything. But some of you are here to celebrate our own Michael Lassman's bar mitzvah. And that too. Emma's here too for that. To celebrate Michael's bar mitzvah. And he will be leading much of this morning. And as I say about the children, illuminating the words of Torah, really marking this moment for himself. I won't preempt his words of coming of age in this newer way as an adult. But I will pass over to him now. We are on service number 4, page 122.
Hi everybody, and a good morning from me, and Shabbat Shalom to you all. And I have to change glasses, so I won't be able to see you very well because I have to be able to see this. Before I start, I just want to say I am uncharacteristically nervous. I don't usually feel nerves when I public speak or even when I lead services, but today I'm uncharacteristically nervous. And perhaps there's a kind of a 13-year-old boy inside of me trying to get out, I'm not sure. But nevertheless, I'm delighted that you're all here, and those of you that are at home, it's great to have you with us. And I know that I've got quite a few people, hopefully people dialing in from Israel, my sister and family. I can't see whether you're there or not, but I'll have a look in a moment. So it's lovely for you to be here, and thanks for all my friends for coming. So, halfway down on page 122. Eternal God, we come before you surrounded by members of our community. With them we share our happiness, and it becomes greater. Our troubles, and they become smaller. May we never be too mean to give, nor too proud to receive. For in receiving we discover you and begin to understand the meaning of life. Let us not separate ourselves from the true strength of our community, the experience and the wisdom of people, of old people, the hopes of the young, and the examples of care and courage which sustain us. Give us an open mind and a generous heart to welcome those who need us and to admit your presence into our daily lives. I'm going to lead more of the service in English because I've got quite a lot of friends here who don't speak Hebrew and will be able to follow. So when it's in italics, you can read with me. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for the strength that has come to us through our community. We should revere God in all that we do, privately as well as publicly, acknowledge the truth and speak it in our hearts. Sovereign of all worlds, we lay our supplications before you, relying not on our merit, but on your abundant mercy. For what are we? What is our life? And what our piety? What our goodness and what our strength? What can we say in your presence, eternal God? Are not the mighty of us as nothing before you, the famous as though they had never lived, the learned as if they had no knowledge, and the wise as if without understanding? For most of what we do is futile, and our life on earth is but a span. Our superiority over the other animals amounts to little, for all is vanity. Nevertheless, we are your people, children of your covenant, and called to your service. Therefore, it is right that we should thank and praise you, to proclaim your holiness and daily say before you. Praise be the one at whose command the world came to be. We praise you, our God, sovereign of the universe, worshipped by your people, lauded and glorified by those who love and serve you. With songs of praise we extol you and proclaim your sovereignty, sole source of the life of all worlds. We praise you, sovereign God, to whom all praise is due. At dawn and dusk I seek you. Reach out and look to you. With soul athirst I yearn for you. I am a beggar at your door. The galaxies cannot contain you, yet you dwell in my inmost being. I hold your glory in my heart. My love for you exceeds my speech. So I will praise your name, Eternal One, as long as your breath of life remains within me. Praise be the Eternal One forever. Amen and amen. Praise be the eternal God, the God of Israel, who does wonderful things. Let God's glorious name be praised forever. and let the whole earth be filled with God's glory. Amen and amen.
Nishmat kol chai, tevarech et shemcha. Adonai Eloheinu, beruach kol basar, tevaeh u'tromer, zikrecha malkeinu tamid. Min ha'olam ve'ad ha'olam, ata el.
God of all ages, of all generations, of all creatures to whom our praise ascends, you guide the world with constant love, your children with tender care. To you alone we give thanks. Yet though our mouths should overflow with a song as the sea, our tongues with exultation as the roaring waves, and our lips with the praise as heaven's wide expanse, and though our eyes shine as the sun and the moon, our arms spread forth like wings of eagles, and our feet speed swiftly as hinds, still we could not fully thank you, eternal God, for your infinite kindness to our ancestors and to us. Therefore, the limbs you have formed in us, the spirit you have breathed into us, and the tongue you have set in our mouths, all shall unite to thank and praise, extol you, and exalt you, the sovereign God. Every mouth shall thank you, every tongue bear witness to you, every knee shall bend to you, and every body bow down to you. Every heart shall revere you, and every fibre of our being shall sing your praise. For so it is written, all my bones shall say, who is like you, eternal one? Therefore, and proclaim your glory, and praise your holy name, as it is said, praise the eternal one, O my soul, and let all that is within me praise God's holy name. Please read responsively. Dean, can you do the other part as well? Could you read the other part on the responsive? Just as it goes through to the Zoom. The Eternal One reigns in grandeur robed.
Robed and girded with strength,
The world stands firm.
it shall not be moved.
The throne is established from of old.
For you are everlasting.
The oceans roar, eternal God. The thundering oceans roar.
The thundering oceans rage.
Yet greater than the roaring waves, mightier than the breaking seas.
You stand supreme on high,
Sure are the proofs of your power, O God.
and holiness adorns your house forever.
Please stand.
Yishtabak shimcha lad malkeinu, Ha'el hamelech hagadol v'hakadosh b'shamayim u'va'aretz. Ki laka na'e Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu. Shir u'shvacha, Halel v'zimra, Brachot v'hodahot, me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'shirei zimra.
Please remain standing and turn to page 135.
Baruch hu et Adonai, Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai, Hamevorach, le'olam va'ed.
Let's sit down. As we move towards the blessings that herald in the Shema, our watchword of faith, the first that marks and notices the natural world around us, the passage of time and seasons, and the second almost as apologia of that Judaism in the minutiae of laws and Torah holds love. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzei or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol, hame'er la'aretz l'darim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo machadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mala ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, v'al moreh or she'asita, yefaruch ha'sela, baruch atah Adonai, yotzei hamorot. And together in English. Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching. Make us faithful to your commandments and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love, you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. We praise you, O God. In love, you have called your people, Israel, to serve you. And if you choose, please stand with us. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto
Together, Vahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavecha, u'v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol mo'odecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi matzavacha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'v'lechtecha b'derech, u'v'shokpacha u'kumecha, ukashatam la'ot al yadecha, v'hayu la'totafot bein einecha, ukatavtam al muzot beitecha, uvisharecha.
למען תזכרו, ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני Adonai Elohim, Asher hotziti etchem meretz Mitzrayim, להיות לכם Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohim.
Let's sit down as we confirm what we've said to be true, reliable, good and beautiful and true, sound, established and enduring are these words now and forever. True it is, Eternal One, that you are our sovereign God and Redeemer, as you were the God and Redeemer of our ancestors. You are our Maker, the rock of our salvation. We have known you always as our helper and our liberator. There is no God but you. Truly you are first and you are last. We have no Redeemer but you. You redeemed us from Egypt, freed us from the house of bondage. Then with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang to you this song. שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו.
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Yisrael. Mo Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo. Mo Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo. Kadosh Yisrael. Baruch Atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
Let's stand for our tefillah, the Amidah. During the week, 13 petitionary prayers offered on Shabbat, the moment where we rest and treat the world as it should be rather than it is. We focus just on Shabbat. We're on page 140.
Adonai Shabbatai Tiftach Uvia Gitei Latecha. Adonai Shabbatai Tiftach Uvia Gitei Latecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, u'Mevi Gula Livnei v'Neihem, L'ma'an Shemo b'Yahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Machaye Metim atah Rav LaHoshia, Mashiv HaRuach u'Morid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh u'Morid HaTal.
Mechalkel Chayim v'Chesed, Mechayim Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim, Zomek Noflim V'Rofeh Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Makayem Emunato Lishenei Afar. Mi Chamocha Al Gemurot U'mi Domela Melech Meimit U'Machayeh U'Matzmiach
V'ne'eman atah lahachayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Machayeh hametim.
Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei maron, Kakatuv al yad neviecha, Kakatuv al yad neviecha. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melo kol haaretz kevodo, kevodo, alei olam, Baruch kevod Adonai, תמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה, הללויה. ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. טובתו לטובתו, לטובתו נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול, הקדוש ברוך הוא. לטובתו, לטובתו, לטובתו נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש, האל
Let's sit down. We can read together. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for the Sabbath day, for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם ישמעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת. בשביעי רצית בו ויקדש לו שבת. עמדת ימין, אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת. זכר למעשה, למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה, למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראים עונג שבת.
Baruch atah Adonai, Makadesh HaShabbat. Top of page 144. Eternal God, be gracious to your people Israel. In your love, accept their prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight. We praise you, O God, whom alone we worship in reverence. Modim anachnu lach, שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו לעולם ועד. צור חיינו, מגן ישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. נודה לך נספר תהילתך, על חיינו המסורים בידיך, ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך, ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת ערב ובוקר וצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות.
Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, barchinu avinu kulanu ke'echad, be'or panecha, ki be'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, Torat chaim, ve'ahavat chesed, וצדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים ושלום. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, עמך, וטוב בעיניך, לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, עמך.
Baruch atah Adonai oseh hashalom. Let's take a few moments for silent prayer.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. הוא עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני
יעשה שלום,
יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל Israel.
So we turn now to the reading of Torah, Kriyat Torah, page 481, the heart of our Shabbat morning service.
אין כמוך לאלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
Stand.
אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו.
Gadlu l'Adonai iti u'noramama shamo yachdav.
לך אדוני הגדולה, הגבורה והתפארת, והנצח והאור. כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל לראש.
Sit down as the Torah arrives at the desk. Thank you. Impressive one-handed. Thank you. Alan, you want to bring over? So I'm so delighted in this mood that has taken our community of progress and learning, no matter what your age, adding new moments of coming of age. I'm looking at Etty and Sharon, who just marked their adult Banot Mitzvah. So really with great pride from this community, and for Michael, who literally has spent his life growing up in this congregation, so perhaps adds a layer of poignancy. Let me call up Michael to bless, to read from, to illuminate the words of Torah. Ya'amod haba mitzvah Mikael ben Elimelech v'Sara likrat haTorah.
Clearly a habit from elsewhere.
We don't mind visitor Min Chagim coming in. Use this for the
Yeah,
and then we'll roll it out.
Yeah, okay. Well, I can't do that. No. Right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And one of the things I always notice in winter, when I put on my talit, my prayer shawl, how grateful I am that I've got a shawl to wear in the cold. It's not quite the same here in this July, is it?
Do you need me to be slowing you down by tapping your arm
No,
like I do for the children?
I think not. I think not. I'm quite used to public speaking, and I know how to do it slowly. But yeah, you can tap me if I can speak up with you. In the past few days and weeks, several people have been asking me why I've chosen to be bar mitzvah today. And I thought, before I go on to discuss my parashah, the portion I'll be reading, I thought it'd be useful to explain why I'm here on the bimah today, reading from the Torah and marking an adult bar mitzvah, which after all is a rite of passage at the ripe old, well, middle age of 64. This coming of age ceremony is one that was kind of dispensed with by the early liberal Jewish movement. Maybe a biblical 13-year-old was ready to be a man, maybe even to get married, but certainly not a 20th or 21st century descendant of his. It was then gender exclusive, only for boys, which was perhaps another reason for removing the ceremony from our practice. It did not fit with the modern egalitarian religion which was being created. It was reintroduced well after I was 13 and was added to with a bat mitzvah, the daughter of the covenant, for the girls of the same age. I missed the boat. So for those of you that say, congratulations on your second bar mitzvah, no, this is my first. I've thought many times about being bar mitzvah over the years, particularly last year when I was 63, which would have been, of course, the 50th anniversary of me turning 13. However, each time I thought about doing it, I concluded that it was not the right time. I wasn't ready. So why now does coming of age, what now does coming of age mean to me today? I've been a member here, as Rebecca just said, all my life. The building, I even outdate the building. And I'm really well acquainted with our liturgy, and for the past 15 years or so have led the occasional services when Rebecca has been away, and even read from Torah itself. I had the privilege of reading Bereshit, the opening Torah verses, at Simchat Torah a few years ago. So why now am I feeling ready to mark this occasion? I guess it relates to changes within me that have taken place in the last few years that have readied me, a coming together of various factors. I feel more acquainted with Torah than I have ever felt before, particularly during the times of early COVID in the lockdown. There were only 4 of us here in the sanctuary, Dean, Rebecca, David and myself on the tech desk, making sure people could partake in the services from home, which meant that opening the Ark every week and taking the Torah out was down to me, and I felt very connected. I spent more physical time with Torah and actually at the same time chose to read each portion the week leading up to the Friday night of that Shabbat. And as I read it, some of the mysteries within it began to unfold and make more sense to me. It felt less distant, and I felt a stronger connection to it as part of my heritage. Adding to that, 7 years ago, as part of my professional development originally, I didn't realize it would then be part of my personal development, I joined a school of classical philosophy, and 2 of my teachers are here with us today. And through my study, I've gained a much deeper insight into my own spiritual self. Attending classes weekly, I've learned so much and have been able to bring the influences of ancient wisdoms that I have studied into my Judaism, which has certainly enriched my understanding and participation of the religion. I have felt a real synthesis of teaching that are completely complementary and do not conflict at any point. I also think that as I've got older, I've spent more time in deep and reflective conversation with my dear friends. Again, some of them are here with me now. And their input into my life has helped me mature, and maybe, just maybe, I'm ready to be a man. And so to my portion. I'm reading Numbers, from the book of Numbers, chapter 27, verses 1 to 7. And they describe the story of the daughters of Zelophehad. As Emma's just said to me earlier on in the car park, it's the one that she never misses. And their request for fair treatment from a gender perspective in terms of their inheritance from their late father. The 5 young women are actually named, something which is quite unusual in Torah for women. Plenty of women exist and are unnamed: Lot's wife and daughters, Potiphar's wife, Pharaoh's daughter, and those that are named usually have huge significance to our story. Our 4 mothers, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel and Leah, Moses' mother and sister, and the 2 midwives who saved him, and so on. So why were the names of these 5 young women who appear just once in these 11 verses named? Perhaps the answers are varied. Firstly, their lineage is defined. They are the 5 times great-granddaughters of Joseph, so they have a really solid pedigree. The daughters are confident and assertive and able to come before Moses and the community leaders to stand and deliver their case for their own inheritance. Maybe also this is Torah's attempt at gender equality. Well, nearly, because as you will hear, they are granted their wish as a statute for then and for the future. However, any sons come first, but at least they can inherit. As I was reading this, I wondered, when in the passing of time since Zelophehad's daughters did things move backwards? Really, it's been fairly recent in our society that women could inherit at all, and there are countless stories about daughters being bypassed in favor of distant male relatives. In fact, it was only 57 years ago that the law changed in this country to allow women to inherit hereditary titles. So clearly the compilers of texts thought it was important that the daughters were named. But I'm left without a solid answer to why. Perhaps just to honor them in a way that seemed important, and maybe that's reason enough. They deserve honoring. Certainly it resonates with me, both personally and professionally, because in my role as a diversity and inclusion consultant, gender equality matters. So reading this portion feels a little bit like equality in Torah.
We've got the Torah scroll ready to follow Michael in his words of Torah.
Can you just give me a second? My nose is running. I thought I had my handkerchief in my pocket.
Definitely. So look out for the first word of Torah that Michael will read, which is always so, it's just always so powerful when we see female conjugated verbs in Torah, because you can imagine there aren't many of them. So Tikravna, Banot Zelophehad, is how Michael begins his portion.
Baruch et Adonai Hamavarach. Baruch Adonai Hamavarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher banu michol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah. V'takravna benot Zelophehad ben Hefer ben Gilad, ben Machir, ben Manasseh, לממשפחות מנשה בן יוסף. Ve'ela shemot notav, machla, noah, v'hagla, u'milcha v'tirza. ותעמודנה לפני משה ולפני אלעזר הכהן ולפני המסיעים וכל העדה פתח אוהל מאוד לאמור. אבינו מת במדבר והוא לא היה בתוך העדה ונועדים על אדוני בעדת קורח. כי בחרתו מת ובענים לא היו לו. למה ייגש שם אבינו מתוך משפטו? כי אין לו בן נתן לנו אחוזת בתוך אחי אבינו. ויקרב משה את משפטן לפני אדוני. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, כן בנות צלופחד דברות נתתי תן לכן, אחוזת נחלה בתוך אחי אביהן, ואהבת את נחלת אביהן לכן. ואל בני ישראל תדבר לאמור, איש כי ימות ובן אין לו, והרבת את נחלתו לבתו, ואם אין לו בת נחלתו, ונתתם את נחלתו לחייב. ואם אין לו אחים, ונתתם את נחלתו לחי אבינו. ואם אין אחים לאביו, ונתתם את נחלתו לשרו הקרוב, אליו ממשפטו ירש אתה. ויתה לפני ישראל לחוקת משפט כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה. So, what does this mean? I'll see if I can translate it. Rebecca, you might need to step in. Okay. So the daughters of Zelophehad, who was the son of Hefer, the son of Gilad, the son of Machir, and the son of Manasseh, and Manasseh was of the family of Manasseh, the son of Joseph. And the daughters were called Machla, Noah, Hagla, Malcha, and Tirzah. And they came forward and they spoke to Moses. And they stood in front of Moses and Eleazar, the high priest, and the leaders of all the community in front of the tent of meeting. And they said, our father died in the desert, but he was not banded together behind in the gang that confronted the Eternal, and he was not part of the gathering of Korach, but he died there of his own sins. Why should it be that his name is lost from the families because he had no sons? We should inherit part of his inheritance. And Moses...
Name disappearing.
Which one?
Okay, carry on and see if you do.
Sorry. And Moses took their case before the Eternal. Mm-hmm. And God said to Moses that the daughters of Zelophehad were just and right in their request for their inheritance. And they should inherit their father's inheritance and his name. And
so this is God saying it.
Yeah, God saying and saying speak to the children of Israel and say to them this, that if a man should die without a son, then his inheritance should be passed to his daughters. And if he has no daughters, then his inheritance should be passed to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, then it should be passed to father's brothers. And if there are no father's brothers, then it should go to his inheritance should go to his closest relatives in his family. And this is a statute for all times, for now and for the future. And God spoke this to Moses. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yeshua Koach. Let's stand for the raising of the scroll so we can see the words of Torah.
Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Ve'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtakanu ve'ha'koso. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtakanu ve'ha'koso. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtakanu ve'ha'koso. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtakanu ve'ha'koso. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romenu. Romenu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtakanu ve'ha'koso. Romenu Adonai
Please sit. Traditionally, after reading Torah, we read Haftarah. And the Haftarah is excerpts from prophets and other writings. And about 5 or 6 years ago, at our Beit Tefillah group, the Beit Tefillah is the committee that look after our services and how they develop and what we put into our service, we came to a decision that the Haftarah doesn't have to be from ancient writings and can be from modern writings. And to this date, my understanding is we've not. So there is a new thing today. We are not having a traditional Haftarah, nor will I be blessing the Haftarah, reading the Haftarah blessings in their traditional form, because this is modern writings which I'm using to define further the words of Torah.
But it's been done by other synagogues, hence
Yeah,
the blessing
okay.
sounds very familiar.
Okay, this is not just us. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe, who inspired prophets and poets until today. We thank you, O God, for the gift of Torah, your servant Moses, and your people Israel. On truth, by Claude Montefiore. Truth is not the best loved of virtues, and yet it is one of the noblest, as it is perhaps the hardest of them all. It needs courage and resolution, strength of will. It must be loved for its own sake, or it will not be practiced. There can be no truth which is not divine, and there can be no falsehood which is divine. There is no truth which is not God's truth, and there is no truth which shall not prevail. The divorce between officialism and truth is becoming greater in each decade. This was written 100 years ago. And the results of that divorce are also becoming more serious. Specious arguments are used about not disturbing the innocent faith of uneducated persons, about not making bad blood, about letting sleeping dogs lie, about letting error destroy itself, about the urgent practical questions which beset and menace the community, about the sovereign virtue of peace, about the immense need for outward forms, about the needful illusions in the education of children, about all things under heaven except one. And that one omitted subject is, what do we owe to truth? Is not truth allied to righteousness? Is not knowledge allied to God? Has truth in the long run ever failed to come by her own? Great is truth and mighty above all things. From Israel Matic. Moments in human thought, like the most lasting trees, take long to mature. It is the permanent function of liberalism in religion to combine tradition and truth into a harmonious unity. Such a task can never be completed. Growing knowledge makes it endless, nor can it wait, for sometimes knowledge grows apace. Liberal Judaism must watch all developments of human thought, not to hurl anathemas against ideas which contradict some elements in traditional Judaism, but to use all that is true for the enrichment and enlargement of Judaism. The times present us with a great opportunity, an opportunity that lies in a great need. All who love Judaism and believe in the destiny of the Jewish people must feel a challenge in these conditions. And the challenge is no less a one than this. Can Judaism survive, live? And our answer is, it must. And finally, on continuity by Abraham Geiger. There was such a time when it seemed right that women should be excluded from active participation in synagogue life and worship. Then came the progressive movement and declared, let there be from now on no distinction of duties for men and women. These few examples, because they show that there has been a progressive impulse at work in the past history of our faith, prompt us to ask what the same impulse may require in the present. It is not an easy task. How much do we owe to tradition? How much to fresh insights? And are they really advances in truth or merely passing fashions? We cannot be sure. But this is certain, that the changes which the world has seen in recent times are vast, and that Judaism needs to respond to them. It needs, for instance, to express Jewish thought and feeling, as this prayer book, this comes from Siddur Lev Hadash, attempts to do in ways both old and new. The formulation of the highest truth needs constant revision, and even more surely do the forms in which that truth is clothed. When dogma takes the place of love, religion is dead. and a liturgy that cannot expand, that cannot absorb the religious teachings of the age, that cannot dare to sing to the Eternal One new songs, such a liturgy is a printed page. It is not a prayer fresh from the suppliant's heart. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have been the source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages. The faithful God whose word is deed, whose every word is true and just. For the Torah, for the divine service of the poets, and for this Sabbath day, which you, Eternal One, our God, have given us for holiness and rest, for honor and beauty, for all these we offer thanks. May all the living come to praise your name forever. We praise you, Eternal One, for the holiness of the Sabbath.
Amen. Yeshakot, Michael. I'm just going to add do you want to stay up here and
Yeah.
I'm going to ask us all to stand for the community prayers. I invite Sheila up, but we're going to add an extra prayer today. So Alan, if you just stand in the centre. So today, this very day, just thinking of progress, thinking of looking forward, thinking of gratitude. Come stand next to me, Sheila, while I add one prayer before the community prayers. Thinking of how we embrace the legacy of our Judaism. We are also called upon to remember and observe and commemorate. And today is exactly today, the 80th anniversary of Rafle Duvel Div, the day that French Jews were gathered in the winter stadium, the Velodrome d'Hiver, on the morning of the 16th of July, 1942, exactly 80 years. And I think in our commemoration, certainly here in this country, we focus so much on what happened in Germany, in Poland, in Austria, but this day and the eventual sense of France's responsibility for what happened is a really critical part of our Jewish history. So on that morning, 4,500 French police officers rounded up 11,000 Jews, many of them women and children who assumed that they would not be targeted and only the men. So the women and children did not go into hiding, but were rounded up into that velodrome created for the power of sport and wondrousness of modernity, which held these initially 11,000 women, children, babies from 2 years old up to 16 gathered in the velodrome, kept there for the next few weeks, gathering more and more, eventually sent on to concentration camps of Pithiviers and Beaune-la-Rolande in the Loiret region of the south of Paris, as well as Drancy. We know that many were left there before they were sent on to Auschwitz. An extraordinary figure, and forgive me for this detail, but it just feels so resonant that today is that anniversary. An extraordinary detail for me watching Ruby on the Bima is that 3,000 babies and children were left unaccompanied alone at these French concentration camps while their parents were sent to Auschwitz, only weeks later to be sent themselves on a train with strange adults to Auschwitz to lose their lives. And it seems that because, and I'm fascinated by this as a visual learner and as someone that really understands the power and impact of visual commemorations, the fact that there was none, the fact that there were very few photos of that moment has been fascinating for French Jews who have returned. We know it was only 700 and something who remained in the 1940s after the war. And it wasn't until 1995 that President Jacques Chirac spoke out with an apology of what happened there in Vel d'Hiv and said it was a place that was created for high endeavors for humanity, but on that day it accomplished the irreparable shame. So I wanted to honor this day. Tomorrow, as you saw, the community was invited to an event with Generation to Generation that will commemorate the day. But I wanted to just offer a short prayer before Sheila offers our prayers. A prayer that was written by Rabbi Daniel Fahy, French rabbi, who wrote it 3 years before Jacques Chirac offered that apology. Wherever you may be, he wrote, whenever that may be, I shall be there with you, the last survivor. Because you will be the last survivor, I shall be there, I promise you. I promise to be the memory of your memory. I promise that what you have endured will not be erased from the human conscience. I promise you this ultimate justice, that neither your name nor your suffering shall be permitted to vanish from world history. You were one man, one woman, but it is as if you had been one suffering humanity. And because you will be the last, it will be my duty to take over your martyrdom as one takes over in a relay, not in order to relive it, but to relate it for all time, to bear witness before history, in order that criminals shall no longer be absolved, to teach children that having become adults, they may build a society conscious of its past and resolutely turn towards a future of justice, love, and peace. And let us say, Amen. Sheila, I'll swap with you to use the microphone.
Eternal God, we ask your blessing on Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, as well as those who govern our country. Guide them and all who govern with a spirit of wisdom and compassion, so that they care for the citizen and the stranger and bring benefit to all the inhabitants of our land and the world. Sorry. Bless all our brothers and sisters of the House of Israel. Bless our congregation and all its members. Be with those who seek your presence and all who are in need of healing, spiritual or physical. Let them know that you are near to comfort and sustain them. May peace exist in the state of Israel soon and in our time. May you, eternal God, grant blessing to her, established as an age-old dream and home to the oppressed. May its leaders and citizens be inspired with a faithfulness to the aims of its founders, and may the country be imbued with the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice always. May this Shabbat renew our energy to build and sustain a better world, to deepen our gratitude of so much that surrounds us. And let us say,
Amen. Middle of page 486. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki nizgav shemo lavado.
Odo aretz v'shamayim, v'yarem keren le'amo, tehila l'kol chasidav, b'nei Yisrael am karovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ki lecha tov natati lachem, torati al ta'azofu. Et chaim hi lamachazikim ba, v'tom keha mevusha, d'racheha darchenu, v'chol netivoteha shalom.
sit down. So just thinking, just before we have a little gift surprise for Michael, as you can imagine, we like doing that for our bar bat mitzvah, and why not him? So for me today, the daughters of Zelophehad, of us being in synagogue, of us thinking about what it means, or what it means to be committed to progress when we celebrate week in, week out, day out, a religion that is based on legacy, inheritance, the past, and how do we hold the two together? Last night over dinner, my father really wanted to talk about the James Webb telescope that I'm sure we've all been glued to, and what it means to have a time machine that allows us looking back into the past as if we're looking into the future, all under the guise, under the umbrella of this search for future knowledge, this commitment for future knowledge that would make our world unimaginable for those who came before us. He and I were particularly taken by the idea, as we know, the passage of the speed of light, the miles it covers, the years that it covers, and the star Betelgeuse. And Betelgeuse star is one light. So Betelgeuse star, by virtue of how far away it is, means that this telescope allows a star to be looked at that may have been shining above the heads of those in the reign of Richard II in 1380. This moved my father to tears last night and made me wonder, what is it about our commitment to knowledge, to learning, to imagining a world that we couldn't imagine 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? We established that the scientists that worked on the Hubble telescope already, by the time the Hubble telescope was ready for anyone, already plans and blueprints were being discussed and engineered for the next, because one never stops with knowledge. And so for me, thinking of the daughters of Zelophehad, thinking of the readers of the founders of liberal Judaism that Michael and I felt so well captured, that commitment to modernity, to progress that the daughters of Zelophehad held, I wanted to just share in our few moments the story that is in Talmud Menachot 29b. I have sometimes shared this on a Shabbat Resold, but today, in response, some of my colleagues even using this as an alternative Haftorah today. This moment that the Talmud tells us of Moses' life. When Moses dies, Moses goes to heaven, as we hope, or hope for any of us, if we have that idea of what happens after death. Moses goes. This is a story offered Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Moses goes up to heaven, and what does he see? He sees God intricately sitting before the words of Torah. Remember that actually the Torah captures, we love this, but I love this bit, of Moses and God writing Torah. Moses, and there being a reference even to Moses' capacity for handwriting, to write it clearly. So Moses discovers God in front of the words of Torah. The Hebrew letters, albeit we're not sure what kind of Hebrew that was then. And what is God doing? Affixing crowns to every letter, making it look potentially more beautiful, but incredibly confusing for Moses. Moses asks God, because we know that Moses and God are intimate friends, Moses asks God, what on earth are you doing? Why are you adding these crown shapes to the top of each of the Hebrew letters? And God answers, saying, you know what? In a few years to come, there will rise a phenomenal scholar, a phenomenal rabbi called Akiva, which I digress for a moment to say that Akiva very famously only studied his learning, his Judaism as an adult. In fact, we're told that really by the age of 39, he knew nothing and started to learn. Michael, you didn't know nothing by the age of 39, but as you've said, you've added your learning now. So God says this great guy, Akiva, is going to come, and Akiva will add to every word of Torah, will bring so much meaning and newness, chidush, new ideas to Torah. And he will expound mounds and mounds of what the Torah has meant to your generation. So Moses, maybe I'm projecting, but he feels a little put out and says, show me this man. And lo and behold, in a TARDIS-like moment, he ends up in the classroom of Rabbi Akiva, who is speaking things that he has no comprehension of. This is his Torah, but Akiva is adding these ideas he doesn't recognize at all. And then suddenly Akiva finishes a moment of learning saying, and this is in the name and honoring Avinu Moshe, our father, our teacher of Moses. And Moses feels reassured. And the dream, we're told, ends. And he goes back to God. And he says, well, if you knew such a clever guy was coming along, why did you give Torah to me? And God says, this was always my plan of progression, of foundation. Allow me a little creative narrative. The conversation might not have gone exactly like this, but God defends the decision. This was my thought. This was my commitment, that you would come along and give us Torah. Akiva would come and add. And I really think, Michael, today, in thinking about the James Webb Telescope, thinking of our commitment to moving forward with the honor and reverence of looking behind us, that you have captured that. You have captured that in sharing your story of being part of Finchley Progressive, of just missing out on the bar mitzvah. When I was telling my children it was your bar mitzvah, you said, what? He never had one? No, he never had one. He missed that moment. Your decision to come back, but actually for me, that gap in between is what I think has been just such a gift for us as this congregation. That gap in between of age 13 to 64 today, when you chose to become bar mitzvah, your commitment to so many parts of this synagogue life, to services, to Beit Tefillah, to the health of our building, to your adaptability and flexibility to jump behind that tech desk the minute we needed to, along with your good friend and our beloved congregant David. Paul joined you, many others. I think that really it is those years between 13 and 64 that capture you wrestling with progress, you talking so often how your philosophical studies have only added to your understanding of and appreciation of your Judaism. And you brought that here for all of us to be illuminated by and inspired by this morning. So we thank you. We thank you on this week of being taught about this new telescope that will change our world, our understanding of the galaxies, on the day that you read of the daughters of Zelophehad, that in their way changed our understanding of how Judaism can progress and move, a gift to us as liberal Jews to understand it was always meant to be in the blueprint of us moving forward. So let me ask you all to join me in a strong Mazal Tov to this, our bar mitzvah boy. Now you can say Mazal Tov. So we have a little gift and then something else, but this, I've now forgotten, but it's a Jethro Tull song that is for Michael.
You asked for it.
Long journey of life, or...
Life is a long song.
Thank you.
When you're falling away, can you take stock of the new day? And you hear your voice grow as you choke on what you need to say. Don't you the cloud blue steers the groove. You struggle on your way. Don't you sigh, don't you cry. Lick the dust from your eyes. It's a long song. Life's a long song. Life's a long song. We will meet in the sweet light of dawn. As the Baker Street train gains fills the pain all over your new address. And the symphony sounds on the ground from the new rest. Don't you squeal as the gear grinds you under the wheels. That's a long song. That's a long song. That's a long song. But the tune ends too soon for a song. That's a long song. That's a long song. That's a long song. But the tune ends too soon for a song.
Shakar. Let's stand for Aleinu as we go towards the end of our service.
Aleinu l'shamei aton ha'kol, v'tekenu לנו צבר ראשית, אשר שם כפינו ליחד את שמו, וקור עלינו להעמיד מלכותו. אין עוד, 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 אין עוד.
Kaddish on page 524. We think, of course, of all those 77,000 French Jews rounded up and murdered in the Holocaust, 60% around of which were foreign born. We think of them today, Zichronam livracha. May their memories be for a blessing. And we turn to the yard sites that fall this Shabbat in our congregation. Brian Aarons, son of Sheila and brother of Beverly. Charles Hardoon, father of Janet Barak, grandfather of Mayan, Shachar, and Safria. Louis Hellner, father of Rabbi Frank Hellner. Simon Lazarus, son of Myrna Lazarus. Lucy Levy, mother of Robert Levy. Darlene Roper, mother of Robin Heller. Ruth Shapiro, partner of Renzo Fantoni. And Stephen Urbach, brother of Leslie Urbach. Zichronam livracha. May their memories be for a blessing. And may those who recall and remember their loved ones be comforted in their loss, as we say the words of the Kaddish with them. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, b'yamah divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'hayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, magala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mavorach le'olam amen maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitada v'yitaleh v'talal shemei dekudusha brichu. Leila min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbahata v'nechemata. Da'amiram b'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shamaya. V'hayim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, v'yakol b'nei Adam, v'imru, amen. Let's sit down. So just a quick announcement, which is that the Generation to Generation event tomorrow night online 7 o'clock, featuring our own Leslie Urbach and our own Susanna Kester, who will be speaking about her father, Sasha Kester's experiences in France. It should be a really good event, and luckily on a day like the heat of tomorrow, it is online at 7 o'clock, which brings me to another special event, which is the Liberal Judaism's Rabbi Harry Jacobi lecture tomorrow, hosted by Southgate Progressive Synagogue at 2 o'clock, where Lord Alf Dubs will be speaking on our attitudes to refugees now. You can come in online if you do not fancy travelling in the heat, but I am assured there will be the promise of a wonderful tea and air in the hall. Jane, I'm looking at you. You might know if you do make that journey and to be there. So I think we included links, but if you need any information, just contact me over the weekend. So now just one tiny final something before we go into Donald. No? Oh, something else. Very nice. Okay, I love when that happens. So we, as you can imagine, wondered, kind of a bit late, to give Michael a voucher off his Israel tour in a couple of years. We wondered whether Josie creates our wonderful certificates, would we give him a framed certificate? But instead, we thought about what Michael loves greatly, not most in his life, but loves greatly, that he might choose to share with his friend David on the desk. So I'm going to call upon friend, fellow congregant, Richard, to make a small presentation to you.
He's sort of shrinking down behind Sheila. It's not going to work, Michael. We know you are. So unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I'm just going to make a few very brief remarks. My name's Richard Green. I'm a friend of Michael's. I've been a congregant here for a tiny fraction of the amount of time he has been. Watching Michael up on the bima today, I was reminded of my son's bar mitzvah. My son Reuben became bar mitzvah about three and a half years ago. And has not been seen within these walls since. At the time Reuben, his bar mitzvah came around, we had a tradition that the girl or the boy who was leading the service would invite a member of the congregation to do one of the community prayers as a way of opening it up and say that the child is a member of the community. And I asked my son Reuben, who would you like to do the community prayer? And without missing a beat, he said, Michael Lassman. And I said, oh, okay, great. Why? And he said, because you know how some people are the heart of a congregation? Michael is the knees and the hips and the backbone and the shoulders of the congregation. My son has a slightly weird sense of humor, but it's true. You know, Michael mentioned that he is on our Beit Tefillah committee, the Rights and Practices committee. We've mentioned that he does the tech desk and is now running the rota for the tech desk. But more than that, Michael, you know, Michael is the one who will wander around and make sure that the windows are open when it gets too hot here. Michael is the one who participated in so many Sunday morning discussion groups with us, has taught us about diversity and inclusion, has taught us about Eastern philosophy, has taught me why there is actually some value to throwing plastic bottles out on the street when you're visiting India, which I never would have guessed. And so, to, you know, as thanks and recognition for everything that Michael has done for this congregation, and hoping that his bar mitzvah will not be the last time we see him within these four walls. Come on up. And seeing Paul at the back smiling at me reminds me that, Michael, you won't have seen this, but congratulations are flooding into you via Zoom, via Facebook, from all over. And so a little something from the community to say thank you for everything. And Mazel Tov. Do be back next week, please.
Okay, you're allowed a week off. Yeah, you are allowed a week off. Just seeing one of our teacher, John Rubenstein, who confirmed that my choice of whiskey might be okay. I was worried for such an expert. We are finishing with Ein Keloheinu, and welcome back to our Ivria students who made it from the park over to here for the last Shabbat of term. A Kiddush awaits you. So much, Franklin, Dean. Let's stand for Kiddush. and a blessing for us all, whether we're arriving in that moment in our lives for B'nai Mitzvah, whether we've passed them, whether we're thinking about them. Baruch atah b'voecha, Baruch atah b'tzetecha. Blessed may you be when you come in, and blessed may you be when you go out, now and always. And let us say, Amen.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz, Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen.
I think, Ivriya, will you do Hamotzi? Yeah? Who's going to just come, lift up the cover, all of us. Should we do a Motzi? Min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices join in grateful chorus. As to you our prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, motzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'tevon, everyone, do move to the back where there